swayed. At our feet, across a narrow gap between two vast slabs of terrace, the concrete steps swung forwards and back as if oscillating during an earthquake. As the cloud moved down from the north stand and invaded the pitch, young men wearing balaclavas straddled the metal fence at the front, throwing their red flares. They arced upwards, leaving a faint trace against the darkening sky before landing on the edge of the grass where Hajduk were playing Dinamo Zagreb in the fiercest derby in Croatian football, the Eternal Derby. Others had been left to burn on the seats, starting a fire inside the north stand. There was no panic. The crowd simply shuffled a few metres away, ignoring the flames as they grew and the seats melted. A fire truck careered around the pitch, and two firemen climbed in with a hosepipe to extinguish the danger. The referee decided that the match had to be stopped, but the match was immaterial anyway, and not just because Dinamo had already all but won the 2018-19 title. They had, after all, won 10 of the past 11 championships, and Hajduk hadn't won the league in almost 15 years. No, what mattered was the show and the message. The Torcida was Europe's oldest organised supporters group, formed in 1950. What they said carried weight here. Even as the players waited for the man-made fog to clear, the Torcida in the north stand were busy coordinating alternating right-arm salutes, a call and response with the east stand as they sang to the tune of the triumphal march from Verdi's opera, Aida. At the front, the capos stood facing the north stand, their backs to the pitch, megaphones in hand, directing the thousands in song, most of them furious denunciations of their opponents from the capital. "Kill, kill, kill the Pujera," the Torcida chanted, using the local Dalmatian slang word disparaging those from Zagreb. Dinamo and Zagreb was the Torcida's main enemy for a number of complex historical reasons. Before, back when Yugoslavia existed, the rivalry between the two had a familiar but largely benign root, based on the jealousies and feeling of neglect from those who lived far away from the capital. But after the Croatian War of Independence, which ended in 1995, and following the dissolution of Yugoslavia, Dinamo and Hajduk were now the biggest teams in its fledgling independent league. The old enemies in Belgrade, Red Star and Partizan, were no longer on the fixture list, so the two turned on each other. A small black block of Dinamo Zagreb's ultras, the Bad Blue Boys, numbering perhaps a few hundred at most, were seated far away in a deserted upper part of the Polyude's west stand, quarantined from the rest of the stadium by vast blocks of empty seats. But this was the Torcida's show. Flags were passed down from the top of the stand to the bottom. Sheets of red and blue plastic had been left on each seat for the mosaic choreography that had long ago been mapped out. No one knew what it would say, but your presence was a tacit acknowledgement of the message. A huge plastic banner was unfurled backwards, instantly creating a hot and humid atmosphere underneath. Each individual had their part to play in this collective piece of theatre. It was only later, after the match, that I would see a photograph of what the choreography looked like. A massive image of a supporter, arms outstretched, holding a scarf coloured the red and almost purple-blue of the Torcida's badge. At the bottom, stretching across the entire north stand, was one word in huge white letters: Ultras. What do you see when you watch a football match? Do you see a team drama playing out in front of you? Do you see individual players exhibiting individual skills? Do you see a chess game of numbers, tactics, and patterns? There is no right or wrong answer, but there are millions of people around the world who see the game in a completely different way. Just off the pitch, in the stands behind the goals, is a different way of understanding football, a subculture that has largely defined what the game of football has looked and felt like since the mid-20th century, the Ultras. Yet we know virtually nothing about these groups of football fans who fill the stadiums with smoke. It is a culture that has developed its own rules and norms. It has lived outside of the law, or at the very least in constant friction with it. It communicates through climactic public displays, huge banners, colourfully choreographed messages, political statements, smoke, tributes, denunciations, flares, violence and memorials. It is anti-authoritarian.